From the studios of the Optimism Institute, welcome to Blue Sky, where we share stories and insights to remind us that there is always blue sky above. Sometimes you just have to get your head above the clouds to see it. I'm your host, Bill Burke. My guest today is Kathy Eldon, someone who describes herself as being insatiably curious and creative as a child. These traits led her to go on to be a teacher, editor, and journalist, but it wasn't until the tragic death of her son that she found her true life's work. Kathy's son Dan was murdered while working as a photojournalist in Somalia. To channel their grief and honor Dan's memory with uplifting and optimistic work, Kathy and her daughter Amy launched Creative Visions Foundation to support creative artists who, like Dan, use media to inform, inspire, and empower positive change. CVF has incubated more than 150 projects and productions on 5 continents, touching the lives of more than 100 million people. This story is remarkable and inspiring, and I hope you enjoy this blue sky conversation with Kathy Eldon as much as I did. Kathy Eldon, welcome to the Blue Sky Podcast.
I couldn't be more pleased to be here. Thank you.
Oh, it's amazing to have you on, and I'll describe it probably in the inserts. We met a long time ago, and it's great to be reconnected in this context. And I didn't know a lot about you when we first met, and I've done a lot of research for this conversation. And it seems to me, Kathy, you grew up, or your early work was always in creative fields, it seems, writing, television, magazine editor. Were you always that way as a kid? Were you sort of a creative little kid growing up?
I was the kid who was at camp and I was reading books, in the camp library. I loved making things. I had a mother who had every possible tool or creative tool. So I've always been a sort of crafty person. I ended up inadvertently teaching art, and I realized I'm really not very clever at all in art, but I just love making stuff. Yeah. So I guess so.
So everything from, so you were a TV presenter, you were on camera, magazine editor, journalist. I'm assuming that rubbed off, some of those creative genes rubbed off on your children. Is that fair to say?
Oh my God, are you kidding me? Far exceeded. Oh my goodness. I am such a humble, humble mama. I'm proud of the kids, but humble about myself for sure. My daughter has joined me in producing quite a number of television projects and written books, and she did her own book. So proud of Amy, who is alive and kicking. And then there's the other one, Dan, who was my son who was killed at 22. But my goodness me, there are 4 books, 3 documentaries, and a feature film about somebody who actually only lived for 22 years. So, wow, I'm proud of him as well.
Yes. And it's hard for you, for you to say that and then not sort of dwell a little bit more on Dan. And that's how you and I first connected, was in this remarkable film you were involved in. So tell us, if you're comfortable, Dan was a Reuters photojournalist in Somalia. He was 22 years old, and also I believe he was an artist before. He loved photography, so he had that artistic background. Something drove him to photojournalism, and he finds himself in Somalia.
Yeah, and I think the something drove him is all through his life. He grew up in Kenya, and that's a place where there aren't a lot of social services, or perhaps you could say almost none, and certainly in those days. And as a child, when he realized something needed to be done, he realized very early on that you had to roll up sleeves and just go for it and do it. And he started with a little kid at the age of 14 who needed a heart operation. So he started a project, Save a Heart, and literally did the fundraising required with his friends, always with a team of wonderful friends. You can't do much by yourself, but he mobilized kids to raise the funding that was needed for the child. He went on to a family, a Maasai family, who needed school fees. So he sold the jewelry that the mother made and managed to raise that money. Again, everybody else had to chip in and buy the jewelry. At 18, he traveled to Malawi, clapped out Land Rover with two friends, discovered a refugee camp where the women were carrying water for 4 hours a day. And he said, this is not good. We need to do something. So he mobilized 15 kids across the planet, including Christopher Nolan.
Oh my gosh.
Chris was the director, the cameraman on that voyage travel, along with Rocco Bellic, who was nominated for an Oscar later as well. Yeah, Chris, he was 19 years old. He wore a white linen suit the entire time for a 4-week safari in Land Rovers across Africa. Amazing. And they brought the aid. They built 2 wells, and Chris documented it, which is so cool. But then when he was 21, he heard rumors of a terrible famine in Somalia. And he and Aidan Hartley from Reuters went in. He went with a camera and documented what was happening. And, thousands of people were dying. And he was 21 years old. It was the worst thing he'd ever seen. But those pictures mobilized people around the planet and mobilized other journalists and storytellers. And it all comes back to the power of story, really.
And he lost his life there. Was he mistaken for? Were people resenting the fact that these pictures were getting out? Was he mistaken for a combatant? What all happened? It was just chaos?
Yeah, it was. There was a bombing by UN forces under American control. There was an admiral who was controlling the UN forces. And they actually knew that the subject of their bombing, the object of their bombing, was not there in the house that they attacked. But they went ahead for whatever reason, I don't know, to bomb a house where there was a meeting going on, but the warlord wasn't there. It was actually a meeting of people trying to stop what was going on in Somalia. They were fed up with after the bombing, 80 people were killed, collateral damage, 200 people were wounded. They were women, they were children, they were the imam, who was 90 years old, the spiritual leader of the community. When the people arrived there, they begged the journalists to come. And Dan came together with 4 other journalists. But when they arrived at the scene of the absolute carnage and started taking pictures, the people were so enraged that they blamed the journalists for what had happened. They said, you caused this. And somebody picked up a stone, and somebody had a gun, and somebody else had sticks, and they beat, stoned, and 4 journalists to death. 1 survived to tell the story.
Incredible.
But it was a mistaken identity. But I get it. They were so enraged that, of course, who wouldn't do what they did in a way? I mean, would I have, attacked? I don't know. I like to think I wouldn't have, but who knows?
Well, so it's every parent's worst nightmare. And I think it'd be helpful to people listening to understand how you, when I worked with Ted Turner, he had a lot of tragedy as a child. And he said one time, when these awful things happen, you either break down or you break out.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's great.
And I'm sure you had some of both. I mean, you can't take that news, without just astounding grief. But could you talk about how you decide to take what happened to your son and channel that into the work you've done ever since?
Oh, such a good question, Bill. And Ted Turner was a very important part of this conversation too, is an important part. Right after Dan was killed, I was still in shock, and it was right after. It was at the memorial service for Dan's celebration of life in Nairobi, Kenya. And the head of Reuters was there. And I said, his name is Mark Wood. I said, Mark, Dan's death and the death of the other 3 guys must not be in vain. We have to do something to transform the horror of what happened into a positive force for good. Those were my words. And with it, he said, of course, anything you want. And so my focus, I think I would have died of grief if I hadn't had a focus that was external to Dan's death. But my focus then became creating awareness of the role of journalists in peace and war and the risks. So I worked with AP and Reuters, and we did exhibits, and we did, eventually we did a documentary that was funded by Ted Turner. And a funny story on that one, Pat Mitchell, who was then running TBS's documentary films, told me that I had to convince Ted Turner that he had to pay this money. It was like $650,000, which is so much money. It was a very, very ambitious documentary. And she told me I had to turn up at a dinner um, in Hollywood. And I had recently moved to LA, and I didn't really have any clothes that were suitable. And I'd never, had been in a situation like this, because we weren't making films or anything at this point. I was still, doing whatever I could do about awareness. But I borrowed an outfit and earrings, I remember, from my friend. And I went along, I think it was the Hilton, and at the table was Ted and Jane Fonda, and Harvey Weinstein was at the table.
Oh
by
my
the way,
gosh! Oh
back
boy!
in the day,
Okay.
And a very famous Australian actor, and I don't know who else was there. It was a table of 8, and I sat down apparently next to Jane Fonda, who took one look at me and she said, "You seem very nervous." And I was like, I'm shaking, quivering.
Oh, wow.
But somehow by the end of the evening, I had somehow managed to convince Ted Turner to do this film. And the outcome of that, we were nominated for an Emmy.
I can only imagine what it was like for Kathy Eldon to raise a creative and altruistic child like Dan, only to lose him tragically in a war-torn country thousands of miles away. It was really striking for me to hear her speak of her son's murderers with such composure, and I imagine that her willingness to try to understand and even forgive his killers is what has allowed her to move on so productively. As you'll hear more about, I was in charge of TBS back when she was pitching Ted Turner to fund what turned out to be a remarkable film, Dying to Tell the Story. For more on that, let's get back to our conversation. I was at TBS at the time. It was Dying to Tell the Story. Your son was the centerpiece. It also involved, I remember, Christiane Amanpour and some other reporters who had been in it, who continue to be, many of them, in danger. And I'm not surprised that Ted said yes. When the first Gulf War broke out, a lot of people were saying, why don't you get those journalists out of there? And I even experienced this at the Weather Channel, much tamer circumstances, but it's like they fight to get out and cover the worst storms. They want to be there. It's part of why you go into journalism, to take the photographs your son took, and that came out beautifully in the film. And Ted was always all about that. He wasn't sending people in harm's way. They wanted to be there to do their jobs. Is that your experience?
Yeah. And we actually really tried to cover that because we knew that was an issue, is that people think they're just adventurers or irresponsible. So we chose Carlos Mavrolean, who had been known to be particularly out there as a adventurous journalist. But he talked about his commitment to telling the story. And he was prepared to risk his life. And indeed, he died before we did that UN screening. Carlos Mavrolean had died. And soon after we did the screening, Mohammed Shafi died as well, of a heart attack at the age of like 49 or 50. So we lost 2 of the journalists who, as a consequence of their lives, lost their lives.
Yeah, and we're recording this around the time there's a lot of dislocation, upset at 60 Minutes, and I was watching and reading an interview that Scott Pelley did. And whatever you think about any of these actors involved, I was really struck when Scott Pelley talked emotionally about, he said, I never put on the uniform, I was never in the military, but I went into war as a journalist, and he named the different places he went to. And I think it's something, when you see these folks on TV, you kind of take it for granted, or you think they're in some safe place, or it's a green screen with a fake background or something. They're there. And the casualties, it's not a small number of people.
No, it's a large number of people. In Gaza, I think it's well over, is it 200? I can't remember. We need to look up those statistics. But just last week, somebody died, a journalist, a young woman, I think, died. And it breaks my heart, because they, not only are they physically in danger, but emotionally, they are seeing things that human being should have to see, including soldiers. And right now they do not have the protection. Back in the day, journalists were not targets, but in Gaza, in Ukraine, journalists have become targets, and it's horrific. Also, in many other countries, they are targeted by governments, and they are jailed or harassed or brutalized in some way or another. So thank you for bringing that up. And I was going to bring up Scott Pelley. What he said was so profound.
Yeah. So moving forward, so you created Creative Visions right around that time, I think, late 90s, inspired by your son. And can you explain, it's sort of an incubator, accelerator. What is Creative Visions all about?
It's funny because people are often very confused because we're not like, we don't make a particular widget, nor are we like specifically geared at anything. We don't say of whales. Creative Visions exists to create awareness, to use the power of storytelling to create awareness of critical issues and catalyze positive change. What does that mean? It means the power of story. Something can happen, but if we don't know what happened, we probably don't give a damn, or we're not going to get involved. So I started Creative Visions because I believed that it went beyond journalism. Journalism was where I spent a lot of my life, and I'm proud to be a journalist and to be focusing on journalism. But there are many ways to tell stories. So we have focused on people using art, music, dance, drama, film, all varieties of ways to get stories out. We have incubated under our fiscal sponsorship program, and that means we give people the nonprofit status. We've incubated probably 700 projects and productions since 1998. Right now, we have almost 500 under our umbrella, including Navalny, which won the Oscar. And so we came on board in the Impact campaign. But that's one side of it, Impact Media. And I'm so proud of all the people who are having to raise their own money. We don't have a funding source. We would love to, but we underpin people who need to raise money. And wherever we can, we'll try to connect them with funding. But these people are doing it because they're impassioned storytellers, and they have a story that needs to be told. And then on the other side, we're Impact Education. And we are the very proud recipients of a Bezos Family Foundation grant of over like $6.5 million over 3 years to be able to empower youth to use creative expression, to use all art, music, dance, drama, film, whatever it is, to focus attention on an issue that they choose collectively. Last year, it was called Unique and United, which was like, we're all different, but come together and we can create magic. And this year, it's going to be Protect the Planet, Earth, Air, and Sea.
Yeah.
Water.
Amazing.
Sorry. Yeah, I know. And we give $1 million away to organizations around the world. I'm so proud of our team.
So are those on the education one, do you work with public schools, or is it like boys and girls clubs, or all the above, or how do you?
All of the above. Yeah,
Okay.
It's mobilizing youth leaders and youth to engage in the project called Students Rebuild. And it's a really cool project that Bezos Family Foundation had been doing for 11 or 12 years before they decided that we were the best in the world to give it to. So it's a really robust program. We just had our culmination event, and it was so profoundly moving to see how kids express this unique but united. We also have a mental health initiative for teens called Create, Connect, Care that you can see online that's touching. We had 100,000 entries for this Create, Connect, Care around mental health issues for teens.
Creative Vision seems to be the perfect vehicle for Kathy and her daughter to honor Dan's legacy. They're able to channel their creativity into new, impactful works and fun projects that can have a huge positive impact on individuals and the world. And they've even managed to champion and support high-profile productions like Navalny, winner of an Oscar for Best Documentary Film. And regarding Kathy's speculation about how many journalists have been on the ground covering the war in Gaza, specific numbers are hard to come by, but it appears that the number is probably north of 1,000, and more than 100 have likely already been killed. Now, back to my blue sky conversation with Kathy Eldon. it's clear that you started out, it sounds like, with the emphasis on journalism, but you keep your eyes open for emerging trends, because in 1998, when you started this, journalism was in much more solid footing, for sure. Newspapers were still hanging in there.
We read them. Yeah, hard copies.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. We actually picked up pieces of paper. And now, as we all know, it's really challenged. And one of the first things gets cut in newspapers, obviously, is people. And a lot of the people have been in journalism. So we risk not having eyes and ears on these important stories. Likewise, for young people, school budgets are challenged. Often the very first things that go are the arts, music, art class, those get cut. So is that part of your vision for Creative Visions, to sort of keep your head on a swivel and see where these needs emerge as time goes on?
Well, the beauty is I certainly have a very swivelly head, and we'll probably talk a little bit about the Boundless Project, but I am lucky because when we've got 500 projects under us, virtually everything that you can think of is being attacked, approached, advocated for under the auspices of our umbrella, so that I get to learn on a daily basis about critical issues. And then I can roll up sleeves wherever I can. We, I think, are playing a critical role in creative expression globally, because we are focusing on that and giving every kid who sends a creative expression around Protect Our Planet or whatever, triggers a $5 contribution to an organization, either could be a major organization like CARE that's doing wonderful work with refugees around the arts, or a tiny little organization that is in Haiti that is nurturing kids in Haiti and giving them crayons and stuff to be able to do art programs at school, because they're not allowed. I mean, it's too dangerous for them to be roaming the streets. So the kids have this sense of empowerment that's very cool. But yeah, my head I'm very unstable and wobbly. It just goes all over the place, which is a problem.
Unstable and wobbly in a very good way. Okay, you mentioned Boundless, so let's talk about that. And I'm wondering, you'll describe it hopefully for us, but also, did it come out of this work with children, or where did Boundless come from?
No, well, I have an animated series that I'm working very hard on that's based on a true story. It's called Harper in the Yellow Goggles, and hopefully next year, if we talk again, Bill, it will be finally done. I've learned that animation takes an incredibly long time, but I'm working on a project that is teaching kids a new way of seeing and being. And it's looking for solutions, not just looking at the problems, not staying growly, mad, or sad, but really pop on yellow goggles when you go out to play, and you'll see the world in a very different way. You'll see the good and the bad, the glad and the sad, grumps with a grin, and find magical ways out of the trouble you're in. So I'm very excited about it. But the thing that happened during COVID, when we were all locked away, is I guess I was quiet enough. But what was crazy is in the middle of the night, I would get this snippets of poetry. And I've never been a poetry person because it's really too complicated and hard. But these were pop poetry about issues that mattered. And I quickly published a book. All my other books have been with I've done about 18 books, little bitty ones, big ones, fat ones, whatever. I've always been with proper publishers, but we started an imprint to get that book out. And then again, we went through horrific fires here in LA, and I was among the lucky ones where our house was saved and our Dan Eldon Creative Vision Center was saved. But I was in exile, in evacuation mode for 6 months. And during that time, I was terrified that I'd never get back, that life as I knew it, our community was destroyed. Nearly 8,000 homes in Pacific Palisades, across town, 9,000 in Altadena, gone. And I'm living in a kind of complete void. There's nothing on either side. So I was trying to cheer myself up and others, because people are pretty traumatized. And I started doing Boundless Joy. I think it was like a variety show of whatever I could think of, to, pie making and psychiatrists and everything in between. But I also emerged with more of these crazy poems and drawings and narratives about how we can go from a scrap of an idea to, getting the courage to take off and do it, to joining with other people to really make a profound difference in the world. But it's funny. It's not, it's whimsical. It's Dr. Seuss meets Shel Silverstein, I guess.
That's a good
It's
meeting
a
right
good
there. Well, you know what?
combination.
Yeah. And I think kids will always benefit from some whimsy and some lightness. There's enough
This
heaviness
is
in the world.
grown-ups,
And
though. This is tall kids. Like this is for
oh,
yeah,
even
yeah.
better,
This is for
even better.
grown-ups.
No, it's true though. I mean, we remember, I was joking with someone the other day about how, Schoolhouse Rock, for those of us who grew up on it, that's how I know the preamble of the Constitution. They put it to song. I remember it, and adults could use this too because times aren't getting easier. It's an interesting time to be alive. Now, you were being very humble and you mentioned these other 17 odd books that you've done. Wanted to talk about the Catcher journals because this brings us back to your work around grief and loss, because I don't want people to think that you started the creative work and then just left that, because a loss like this doesn't leave you. So I'd love to hear more about the Catcher books, and I understand hospices use them. Tell us about those projects and how they came about and what they are.
After Dan was killed, oh God, the grief was excruciating, and I know everybody probably who's listening has gone through profound grief. I 2 years after Dan was killed, it's like, oh, you've had the anniversary, you've had Thanksgiving, you've had Christmas. It's supposed to get easier. I think everybody will tell you it doesn't get easier the second year. It gets kind of almost harder because you realize that it's not going away. So Amy and Amy went off to college, and she was so sad. She dropped out of college, and then she went back to Boston University. As she was leaving, I think for Christmas, she said, "Mama, I don't know. I can't remember Dan's voice. I don't remember what he used to say." I said, "Okay, you're going to create an angel catcher. You're going to write down everything he said, put the pictures in, everything you can possibly think of." And after Christmas vacation, she came back with her angel catcher. It was a big book a bulging book of Dan memories. And I said, wow, this is something we could probably share. And so we put in a proposal to Chronicle Books, which had just published the first book about Dan called The Journey is the Destination. And they immediately accepted it because the woman who received it had just lost her dad. And so she understood that this was an important book. It's a little collection of prompts. It's called a guided journal. It's still kind of a bestseller after all 20 years. But that we went on to do Soul Catcher, a journal to help you become who you really are, about finding a purpose in life. And then Amy and I didn't have the right men in our lives. And so we did Love Catcher. And I attracted this remarkable man who had 2 beach houses in Malibu. And I'm going to tell you all this because we were living in a tiny little flat over in West Hollywood, on top of each other. I was audited because I made so little money, doing my foundation work and writing these whatever. Literally, I married this beautiful man, or I met this beautiful man. He was renting his other house to John Turtletab, who was directing National Treasure at the time, the film. And Amy met John, fell madly in love. She wanted somebody funny, and he's very funny. Married him. I married Michael, and we lived side by side on, in this extraordinary situation where both husbands have helped us, do what we're doing, which is really kind.
When you describe that story and it feels like fate or karma or whatever you want to call it, I'll ask this is a very personal question, I suppose. Do you ever feel like Dan's at work? I have people close to me who have lost. My sister lost a daughter, and I experience it around my niece, and I have a friend who lost her husband, and she experienced it. Whether it's the cardinal that flies by or the dime that you pick up on the road. I mean, do you feel Dan at work?
Totally. This book, well, I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be totally self-promoting here, but the book I'm so humble about, it's by me and my noisy spirits. 100%, I don't do this stuff. I don't do this. And so there are a number of poems and funny stories about God winks for one of them, which God winks are like the cardinal flying by, whatever, about, like you don't have to believe in them, but they sure do happen. About other things where I feel like my creative taps has run dry and my noisy spirits are gone. And what do I have to do to get them back? I had some very interesting experiences that I've detailed in a book called In the Heart of Life, which is one strand of it is my experience as a journalist, a PBS, producer, CNN, with energy that cannot be seen. And after Dan was killed, I was invited. No, I was not invited. I went to visit a psychic medium way in the outside of London. I booked under a fake name because that story had been out there. And when I got there, the woman did not have a clue who I was. I walked in, she said, well, I don't know if anything will happen, but you sit down, I'll make some tea. When she came back, she said, oh my goodness, there's this young man jumping up and down saying, Mom, I guess he must be your son. And that was 3 months after Dan had been killed. And she told me about the two memorial services, one in Nairobi and one at St. Bride's Church, which is a journalist church in London, described who was at the services. She told me how Dan was killed because we didn't know. It was a blow to the back of his head. And we didn't find out for months until we got the autopsy report. She gave me a list of everything I needed to do, including to start a foundation. But I said, how can I do this? I can't even get out of bed. And she said, don't worry, darling. He'll be right there. He and his team spirit will be there to help you as close as on your shoulder. And and it was, yeah. That's happened. And she said, don't come back to me for another year. You can access this yourself. So she wasn't somebody who created dependency. She charged like $20. She was the real deal.
Not only does Kathy Eldon channel her grief and honor her son by supporting worthy creative projects, she also offers support to others suffering from devastating losses. Her response to the Los Angeles fires is one example, and her creation of the Catcher series is another. She feels Dan's influence on her work and says that her books are by her and her noisy spirits. Now, as we go back to the final segment of this Blue Sky conversation, I should mention that this features a frank discussion about suicide. It might be difficult and distressing for some of our listeners. You mentioned the fires because grief can be caused by many things, not just the loss of a loved one, but fires and loss of a neighborhood and a community. And I'm wondering if those skills came to bear both to sort of shore you up in a time like that, but maybe also your neighbors and friends who lost, even more than you did.
I think, and this is interesting, Bill, in my boundless conversations, I am very interested in what people tap into to get through hard times. And, what sort of spiritual or other kind of mechanisms do people tap into? And I certainly believe that I am guided in some remarkable way. I don't feel I could have done all this that I get to tell you about. And it's not me. I have, I am blessed to over time have incredible team of people who are doing the hard work. But, there are certain things like rejection is God's protection or whatever you want to call God. So that whenever you run into a stop, generally you look back and think, oh, I'm glad I didn't marry him. Or, and if we got the funding for that, this wouldn't have happened. It's kind of crazy how often that happens. No way out but through, getting through things. What's for you won't go by you. I have all these aphorisms that I like to use, but I do believe there is an internal, external, or a connection to a guidance system that we can listen to. And it's hard. We have to be still. That's hard for me. Super hard.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And losing a child and losing someone so close to you, you're in a club you don't want to be you'd rather not be a member of, but there is sort of a community, and there's a very strong chance that someone's listening to our conversation right now who either has just experienced a loss like this or might have one, it feels like one is coming with an illness in the family. From your perspective, and it's hard to believe it's been as long as it has since you lost Dan, what would you say to somebody who's either experiencing that or on the brink of likely experiencing the kind of grief that you dealt with?
Well, I just ran into a woman. I was at Tartine, which is a lovely coffee shop in Santa Monica the other day, and I'm a very sort of chatty person, and I started chatting with the person who was in front of me, and it was clear that something was going on, and I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "Well, I lost my child," and and it was 2 years ago, and he was 28, and she is in deep grief, and I see this over and over. It's the second year, and what I know to be true, and she's going to come and visit me, is that if you can take that grieving energy, which I swear will destroy you, it's so utterly, takes you into a spiral of so much pain. But if you don't stop grieving. That's that, you have to go through that. But if you can take that grieving energy and apply it somewhere, like do a garden, I was privileged to be able to use my creative spark to be able to do stories, and media, whatever. You can do whatever. If there's a neighborhood kid down the road that needs more attention, or you could bake good cookies, whatever it is that you do and dedicate it. I'm doing this in the name of whomever, but really roll up sleeves. And her child died of suicide. And he'd even said to her, which is so remarkable, he said, "Don't use me as a poster child for suicide." And I said, "Well, actually, he can't control you. He's given, that's not fair. If you want to go into suicide, prevention, that's your choice." He lost his chance on that one, which I thought was really interesting. But, you go for it. You find something that gives you that sense of satisfaction. And if it is tied into that particular whatever, if it was cancer, whatever it is, but you go for it. And I guarantee that when you get out of yourself, at least you've got a period of time when you're not just thinking about how incredibly sad you are. That works for an awful lot of people. And amazing things can happen as a result of it too.
It's amazing. I mean, in the very darkest times, it is an expression of optimism in a way where I consider optimists people who think tomorrow can be better than today, and that they have a role to play in making it so. So you're not just gonna sit there and things are just gonna get better. You've had this awful thing happen to you, but what can you do to make the world a little bit better? And then you accrue benefits as well. And like you said, the grief doesn't go away, but you have an outlet, you have somewhere to channel. You've described it really well, that really negative, powerful energy that's coming at you into something more positive.
For sure. I love that, Bill. Yeah, it is. And it is finding the blue sky. I just love the name of your podcast because, my God, I lived in England for a long time. When I fly out of London, I think, wow, that's amazing. There is a blue sky up there. Yeah,
there's a big yellow thing up there. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, no.
Well, amazing. Kathy, you are a true inspiration, and I'm so glad whatever was at work that brought us back together after all these years. It's just been an absolute delight to have you on. You've helped so many people, and I'm sure you're going to help people in our listening audience with this conversation today. I can't thank you enough for your time and all the great work you do. Really appreciate it.
Can I just say I love your boundless optimism, and I can't wait to share you with everybody I know. So thank you, Bill. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. I'd never heard the expression rejection is God's protection. It's a great one in my opinion, and I hope that this, along with Kathy's story and infectious optimism, will encourage us all to get our heads above the clouds, like the way she felt flying out of London on those many rainy days. I hope you enjoyed this blue sky conversation with Kathy Eldon. Whether you did or not, please leave us a rating or review. They help us keep making our shows better and make it easier for others to come and find us. While you're at it, you might want to subscribe to Blue Sky wherever you get your podcasts. Sign up for the Blue Sky Weekend newsletter at theoptimisminstitute.com and follow us on social media. This and all Blue Sky episodes are made possible by the incredible editing and mixing done by the team at Sound On, Sound Off. You can learn more about their work at soundonsoundoff.com. All graphic design and cover art for Blue Sky and the Optimism Institute are provided by Crush Graphics, and that's Crush with a K if you'd like to check out more of their fantastic work at crushgraphics.com. Until next time, I'm the founder of the Optimism Institute and host of Blue Sky, Bill Burke, and I thank you for listening.